I'm saying Lauren introduced me to Puff.
Oh, got you.
I mean, I knew Puff, but it was more of a personal relationship after, we was at Cassie's birthday.
So
before his passing, Nipsey Hussle was more than just a rapper. He was a revolutionary thinker in the hip-hop world, a man who redefined what independence meant in an industry built on control. His story wasn't just about beats and rhymes, it was about power, ownership, and self-worth. But buried beneath his legacy of entrepreneurship and empowerment lies one of the most talked about moves of his career: his decision to turn down Rick Ross's Maybach Music Group deal. It wasn't personal, it was principle. And according to those close to Nipsey, that single move sent shockwaves through the industry. What people didn't realize at the time was that his rejection of Ross wasn't just about staying independent. It was a statement about trust, manipulation, and the system that feeds on artists who don't know their value. When Rick Ross was building his empire with MMG, signing artists like Meek Mill, Wally, and Gunplay, Nipsey Hussle was one of the few who stood firm on doing it his own way. Ross saw the potential early.
I was gonna do the deal. Is what when Ross put the MMG thing on the table.
Yeah, I got you.
That was just the terms and the way, Ross set up the conversation to start in that building. It was a great opportunity. It was a great situation. I just had a concern with my team getting credit for breaking Nipsey Hussle. So I didn't necessarily want to take that from my team.
Damn.
I got a team I committed to ahead of time.
Damn.
And I needed to make sure they got the credit for what they did, you know what I mean?
Nipsey's buzz was undeniable, and his mixtapes were circulating like wildfire across LA and beyond. Signing to MMG could have elevated his visibility instantly, putting him in the same conversations as some of hip-hop's biggest names. But Nipsey turned it down. At the time, he didn't make a big scene about it. He simply said that his vision didn't align with the deal being offered. Years later, fans would realize just how deep that decision went. It wasn't about ego, it was about trust. In one of his final interviews, Nipsey spoke about the politics of ownership and how deals are often structured to look beneficial on the surface while trapping artists in long-term dependence. He said, "If you don't own your masters, you're a visitor in your own career." That line hit differently when people looked back at his interactions with MMG. While Ross is known for pushing his artists to shine, the structure of major label deals under his wing often involved complex ownership splits and control over creative direction. Nipsey wanted none of that. He believed in buying back the block, not selling it. Sources close to the situation later revealed that Ross had offered Nipsey what many considered a life-changing deal: high upfront money, big promotion, national exposure. But Nipsey, who already had a deep understanding of business from running his All Money In label, saw through the fine print. The way he saw it, any deal that didn't allow him full ownership of his art and movement was a setup.
Now, you taking a spiritual person who's asking for something. He said, I wanted that same feel as life after death. That same feel was that Biggie got, and he went on to sell about 10 million albums or 10 million copies. I was saying, you gotta watch what you say to demons, because it just might come true.
He wasn't trying to be the next superstar controlled by executives. He wanted to be a mogul, not a mascot. This decision created quiet tension. While Ross publicly showed love to Nipsey, insiders claimed there was a silent rivalry between the two camps, one built on respect, but also on disagreement about what success really meant. Ross represented the traditional come-up, using the machine to get rich and then branching out. Nipsey represented something different, breaking the system entirely and rebuilding it from the ground up. The industry didn't know how to handle someone who played the game on his own terms. Years later, as the truth about how independent artists were often boxed out of major deals began to unfold, Nipsey's choice not to sign with Rick Ross started looking prophetic. He didn't just dodge a deal, he dodged the dependency that came with it. He didn't want fame through somebody else's infrastructure. He wanted legacy, ownership, and freedom. And that's exactly why his story continues to echo louder than ever before. Nipsey Hussle's independence wasn't a marketing slogan, it was a full-blown strategy. He studied the industry like a chessboard and understood how labels operated behind the scenes. The rejection of Rick Ross's deal wasn't a diss to MMG. It was a message to every artist coming up. Control your narrative or lose it forever. Nipsey's decision stood out because it came at a time when major labels were aggressively signing anyone with a viral buzz. But he wasn't after quick fame. He was after power. And he knew that power doesn't come from signing contracts, it comes from owning your movement. When he turned Ross down, many industry insiders called it a mistake. They said he was walking away from the kind of money and exposure that could have made him a household name overnight. But Nipsey wasn't chasing instant gratification. He was building equity, both financially and culturally. He once said that he wanted to create something that couldn't be taken away, even if he lost everything else. That's why instead of signing with MMG or another major label, he doubled down on his All Money In brand, pouring every resource he had into his own company. That independence became the cornerstone of his philosophy.
So, as I was educated in music, that's what the production company does.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the label do. I was paying for rent. I was a hustler. I wasn't thinking I was the executive. I was just like, I want to rap. I need a studio. I need equipment. I got to.
Yeah.
But we was making these moves already as a production company or as an executive or as a label to facilitate me as an artist. So the money was coming from my brother, from myself. The decisions was coming from my team, myself. The posters was being stapled up by us. The radio promo, we was going up there and buying the radio spots. We was booking out the House of Blues. We was doing all the things that a label do. So once I got educated to the way that the deals get structured, it would be disrespectful for us to expect anything other than a partnership, because we've been had sweat equity, we've been had money invested.
Yes, sir.
We've been operating as not only the creative but also the administrative. So it would be against the grain of reality to go in.
When Nipsey released Crenshaw and sold physical copies for $100 each, the industry thought he was crazy until Jay-Z bought 100 copies himself. It wasn't about the money. It was about proving that ownership and value could exist outside the traditional label system. That move alone inspired a new generation of artists to rethink their worth. He didn't need the MMG machine because he was his own machine. But behind that independence was also a deep distrust, one shaped by years of watching artists get chewed up and spit out by the same people who claimed to change their lives. Nipsey knew that the industry didn't reward authenticity, it rewarded control. He saw how artists who started as equals eventually became property of the system. And when it came to Rick Ross, he didn't want to risk being molded into someone else's vision. Nipsey respected Ross as a boss, but didn't trust the infrastructure surrounding him. For Nipsey, any partnership that didn't allow him to move on his own timing was a deal with strings attached. Later interviews revealed that Nipsey believed some deals were designed to strip artists of their real potential. He described how the industry often lures artists with luxury while taking their freedom in return. In his own words, they want to make you rich, but never powerful. That philosophy explained everything: why he turned down Ross, why he refused to sign to a major, and why he fought so hard to build everything from within his community. It wasn't just rebellion, it was survival. His refusal also reflected something deeper, a recognition that real wealth isn't measured by contracts but by control. By saying no to Ross, Nipsey effectively said no to the entire exploitative system that built hip-hop's business structure. It wasn't about disrespecting Ross, it was about setting an example. In hindsight, his independence wasn't stubbornness, it was foresight. Every artist who now talks about owning their masters, building their brand, and staying independent owes part of that mindset to Nipsey Hussle.
No, I'm saying Lauren introduced me to Puff.
Oh, got you.
I mean, I knew Puff, but it was more of a personal relationship after, we was at Cassie's birthday.
I went to a seminar about death.
Okay, you have to tell me. You're
Oh
just
my
telling
God.
me this now.
I know, yeah.
Please share. Why?
I have a friend.
Why were you there, and what did you learn?
I learned that no one really dies, and that, it's just an experience in the physical form, and we're attached to our personalities, but that we're just souls, and that we continue and continue and continue. And if you have a spiritual relationship with someone on earth, you will have one with them when you leave earth. So I did this 2-day seminar on death. So
And this was how long ago?
I had to be 25.
What sent you there? Do you find that weird though?
I'm weird.
No, it's not weird that you would go. It's almost like you were preparing yourself for what you would have to
Well,
deal
I told
with.
you I didn't have such a connection to Earth at a young age.
I know, but you don't find that as like you were preparing yourself for what you were going to have to deal with.
But that were
His choice to walk away from the easy route showed that sometimes the biggest power move is simply refusing to be bought. But the deeper layer of this story comes from what Nipsey revealed in his final interviews. Insights that hinted at why he truly couldn't trust the system or the people tied to it. Around that time, he began opening up about the dark politics of the industry, about how power is brokered behind closed doors, and how some deals are never what they seem. According to him, every major opportunity comes with unspoken expectations, and those expectations often go against what real ones stand for. He wasn't afraid to speak about how labels use influence and intimidation to keep control over artists who start thinking too independently. Nipsey's last public comments about deals and partnerships painted a clear picture. He said, "They call it a partnership, but they own the masters, the name, the distribution. That's not partnership, that's slavery with paperwork." This line, resurfacing after his death, became one of the most shared quotes of his career. Many fans believe this was his way of calling out not just the label system, but the culture that surrounds it. One where loyalty is conditional and freedom comes at a price. When he said he didn't trust certain offers from bigger figures in the game, fans immediately drew the connection back to Rick Ross. What makes Nipsey's distrust so significant is that it wasn't rooted in paranoia. It was based on experience. He'd seen artists sign away everything they built for short-term success. He'd seen how the same industry that praised independence also punished it. Every time an artist tried to go against the grain, they were labeled difficult or arrogant. Nipsey was determined not to fall into that trap. The irony is that his independence made him both a target and a legend. When he spoke about turning down deals, it wasn't about being anti-label. It was about protecting legacy. He didn't want a middleman between him and his message. He believed that if he let outside forces dictate his path, the purpose behind his music, empowerment, entrepreneurship, self-reliance, would be diluted. He didn't want to just talk about building, he wanted to build. That's why when he spoke about Ross and MMG, he didn't do it with bitterness. He did it with clarity. He simply said that his energy didn't align with what they represented at the time.
Atlantic, you already know they tradition. They make household names.
Yeah,
and,
man.
And they've been successful doing that for years.
But being so successful on your own.
Right.
That's why when I saw this announcement, I
Right.
was like, man.
Yeah.
Like Nip didn't just walk in there.
Nah, we've been trying to land on the terms that we landed on for some years.
Yeah.
So it just was about me raising my leverage and my profile to where I could really justify what I was asking for.
Yeah.
And you know, I respect that. Like if I come in here and make a request, you gotta, and they, you know, the answer is like, you ain't worth that shit. You gotta go.
Yeah, gotta go get it.
It's possible, but you gotta work for
Sometimes
that.
you gotta show and tell people your worth too.
dope.
Did Atlantic Pack, they passed on you or earlier, right?
Yeah. I said Drake passed, Def Jam, Capital Atlantic too. Thought that I'd be dead at doing life because what I rap is true. So I was just talking about all the labels that I walked in them buildings and played music before I, you know, like I said, had value. And some of them felt it, some of them didn't get it, but I just was referencing taking those meetings. And
But behind those words, many sense something deeper, an understanding that the industry rewards loyalty only when it benefits the power structure. Nipsey saw that system for what it was, a cycle designed to create dependency. His independence made people nervous because it exposed the truth that artists didn't need labels as much as labels needed them. The last few months before his death, Nipsey was reportedly preparing to expand All Money In into a full-scale entertainment company. He wanted to sign artists, not as a boss, but as a partner, giving them the kind of deals he never got offered. He wanted to flip the power dynamic that defined the industry for decades. That vision, combined with his refusal to compromise his values, is what made him a threat to the system, and possibly what made some people uncomfortable with his growing influence. Looking back, Nipsey's entire journey feels like a prophecy, a warning about what happens when independence clashes with an industry built on control. His rejection of Rick Ross's offer was the turning point that defined everything that came after. It wasn't just a business decision, it was a statement about self-ownership in an era when labels disguised control as opportunity. Rick Ross represented a different kind of success, corporate-backed, luxury-driven, and heavily tied to the traditional machine. Nipsey represented something that couldn't be bought: community, authenticity, and generational power. After his death, many began to see the connections between his words and the larger systems he warned about. Fans revisited his interviews and realized that Nipsey had been quietly exposing how the industry uses money to manipulate freedom. He wasn't trying to start beef with anyone. He was trying to start a revolution. When he said he didn't trust certain people in the business, it wasn't about disrespect. It was about survival. His instincts told him that aligning with certain power players would eventually mean losing control of his message.
Like I said, my goal was to create a situation where I could walk into one of these majors and operate as a partner.
Right.
And even since my early stuff, I never really was just an artist. I always bought my equipment. From day one, I sold my Lincoln, sold my Rolex, sold my jewelry, left my dope spot, turned it into a studio, bought equipment. My brother matched me. My homeboy bought my Lincoln from me, brought me a trash bag full of cash, bought my rims, my Alpinas. I sold all the things I was functioning off of, took all my money, and my brother matched me. We went to Sam Ash and we bought all the equipment when I was 19. When I was 18.
It's also worth noting that Nipsey's stance challenged the idea of mentorship in hip-hop. The culture often glorifies big homies who put younger artists on. But Nipsey questioned whether those relationships were genuine or transactional. He wanted to build a model where artists could thrive without being tied to another man's empire. That's why his brand, All Money In, wasn't just a label, it was a movement. He took the same loyalty and structure he learned from the streets and applied it to ownership. To him, independence wasn't isolation, it was protection. When Ross later spoke about Nipsey in interviews, he expressed respect and admiration, saying that Nipsey had the mind of a boss. But the fact that Nipsey turned down Ross's offer still stands as one of the most defining power moves in modern hip-hop history. It showed that sometimes the strongest decision an artist can make is saying no. The truth is, Nipsey Hussle's refusal to sign wasn't just about mistrusting Rick Ross personally. It was about mistrusting the environment that made artists choose between wealth and freedom. He saw how deals were structured to make artists dependent, and he wanted no part of that system. His independence scared people because it proved that success could exist without the middleman. In a world where most artists chase validation through cosigns and contracts, Nipsey became the blueprint for self-made success. He didn't need to sign to MMG, Def Jam, or any other label to prove his worth. He built his own network, funded his own studio, and created a business model that even executives had to respect. That's why, when he spoke about turning down Ross, he did so with no regret. For him, the goal was never to fit in. It was to stand out. Today, Nipsey Hussle's decision to turn down Rick Ross's deal stands as one of the greatest lessons in hip-hop history. A moment that redefined what it means to own yourself in an industry designed to own you. His refusal wasn't about pride, it was about principles. He understood that legacy can't be built on borrowed power. While many artists got rich off label advances, Nipsey got wealthy off ownership, off the fact that every move he made belonged to him and his community. That's why, even after his passing, his vision continues to grow. His last interviews revealed just how intentional his path was. He spoke about wanting to build infrastructure for the next generation: studios, businesses, investments, and education. He wanted to teach artists how to make money work for them instead of being enslaved by it.
I was gonna do the deal. Is what when Ross put the MMG thing on the table.
Yeah, I got you.
That was just the terms and the way, Ross set up the conversation to start in that building. It was a great opportunity. It was a great situation. I just had a concern with my team getting credit for breaking Nipsey Hussle. So I didn't necessarily want to take that from my team. You know what I'm saying? Everything he done said, he done done. Every combo we had, every time I sent a verse, he executed it. So I got a lot of respect for Rose. So I'd have done it off just GP, but I got a team I committed to ahead of time.
Damn.
And I needed to make sure they got the credit for what they did. You know what I mean? That was the only reason. But outside of that, all the other deals, they lacked what the MMG offered, included because it was somebody that understood why Nipsey is valuable without a radio record.
His rejection of Ross's deal was the first domino that allowed that vision to take shape. It gave him the freedom to create Marathon Clothing, to invest in real estate, and to build relationships that weren't rooted in control. He wasn't just preaching ownership, he was living it. Rick Ross, for his part, still speaks highly of Nipsey. He acknowledges that Nipsey's independence was inspiring and that his decision to move differently helped shift how artists think. But that doesn't erase the fact that Nipsey's refusal changed the game. It showed that independence wasn't just an option, it was a revolution. His distrust of the industry's power structures wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. He saw the traps before he stepped into them, and he spent his career warning others not to fall for them either. In the end, Nipsey Hussle didn't just reject a deal, he redefined what a deal should look like. His legacy stands as proof that real wealth isn't measured in fame, but in freedom. The same independence that made him a target is what made him timeless. He didn't leave behind just music. He left behind a blueprint for every artist who refuses to be controlled. And while the world still debates what might have happened if he'd taken that deal, one thing's for sure. Nipsey Hussle's story showed that saying no to the wrong offer can be the most powerful yes to your destiny. And that's why his name will forever stand for more than music. It stands for ownership, purpose, and integrity in an industry that rarely rewards it. His decision to walk away from that deal wasn't the end of a chapter, it was the start of a revolution that continues to inspire every artist fighting for freedom today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Celeb Coded for more hip-hop deep dives, cultural analysis, and the real stories behind the legends who changed the game.